I wasn't supposed to see her that night. The rubbish bins needed taking out, so I grabbed them and headed down the garden path. That's when I spotted Mum crouched by Grandpa's old shed, torch in hand, digging like her life depended on it. In front of her sat Grandpa's tin box, the one that lived under his bed for 30 years. Inside were letters, faded photos, and the passbook he treated like gold. "Mum," I called out. She jumped so hard the torch beam went wild across the grass. For half a second, her face wasn't grief. It was pure panic. Then she moved fast, yanking the passbook out and shoving it deep into the wet soil like she was burying a body. "No," she snapped, voice sharp as broken glass. "You didn't see that." I stepped closer, throat tight. "Why are you hiding Grandpa's things?" "That passbook is dangerous," she said, voice low and final. "It should have stayed buried with him." I reached for it. She slapped my hand away, hard enough to sting. The pain wasn't what hurt most. It was the look in her eyes, like she'd been planning this moment. I dropped to my knees and dug it out myself, mud coating my palms. "I'm taking it to the bank." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "If you walk through those doors, you'll destroy this family." I walked anyway. Before this story unfolds, I'm incredibly grateful you're here. Let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop a comment and let me know your city or country. One important note before we continue. Some elements of this story have been fictionalized for narrative clarity and impact. Any resemblance to real individuals or events is coincidental, but the lesson you'll hear is completely genuine. The bank smelled like warm paper and fake flowers, the kind of smell that tries to make money feel friendly. I walked in with mud still crusted under my nails and slid the passbook across the counter. The corners were damp and dirty. The cashier's smile fell away the moment she looked at it. She glanced at it once, then twice, then called someone without explaining why. People in the queue behind me sighed, annoyed, but I couldn't move. My heartbeat felt loud in my ears, like I'd brought something forbidden into a quiet room. When the branch manager arrived, he didn't look like someone who enjoyed surprises. Mr. Patterson was grey-haired, neat, calm in a way that made the busy lobby feel too loud. He glanced at the passbook, then at me, and asked me to follow him into a small private office. He shut the door and turned the lock. "Before we discuss funds," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something personal." My stomach tightened. "Okay." He studied me with professional care, like a doctor checking symptoms. "Did your mother ever tell you the truth about your birth?" I gave a short laugh because it sounded ridiculous in a bank office. "Of course she did. Why would she lie about that?" He didn't react. He opened the passbook, compared it to something on his screen, and the calm on his face sharpened into something else. "I'm asking," he said quietly, "because the records tied to this passbook don't match the identity you believe you have." He angled the monitor toward me. My name was there, clear as day. But the birth date was wrong, off by 3 whole weeks, and the hospital wasn't the one Mum had always told me about. Underneath, in smaller text, was another name I'd never seen before. It sat there like a footnote someone hoped I'd never notice. My first instinct was to defend her. To defend everything I knew. "That can't be right," I whispered, as if saying it softly would make the screen change. "This account is restricted," Mr. Patterson said. "Your grandfather set conditions before he died. One of them is identity verification across multiple sources." "I have ID," I blurted out. "Passport, driver's license, everything matches." He nodded slowly. "Those documents prove who the government says you are today. This proves who your grandfather believed you were, and why he set this up." He clicked again. A red banner appeared, "Do not release without manager present." Below that, sealed instruction letter on file. My hands started shaking. "Mum has all my documents," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "She raised me. She wouldn't lie about something this big." He lifted a hand, firm but not unkind. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm stating that the data conflicts, and this account was designed specifically to flag conflicts." Then he added quietly, "Your mother's name appears in our system linked to this passbook. She's accessed it more recently than you'd expect." My mouth went dry. "Meaning she's been here," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. The door handle turned before anyone knocked. Mum pushed into the office like she owned the air inside it, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with anger and something close to fear. She must have followed me here. There you are, she said, loud enough for people outside to hear. I told you not to bring that here. Mr. Patterson stood up calmly. This is a private meeting. I'm her mother, she snapped. She's grieving. She doesn't understand what she's doing. I stared at her. My whole life, she translated my feelings into her version of the story. Overwhelmed meant dramatic. Hurt meant disrespect. Questions meant betrayal. And now she was doing it in front of a stranger in a suit, trying to turn my reality into something she could control. She pointed at the passbook like it was a loaded weapon. That needs to be destroyed right now. That is not an option, Mr. Patterson said firmly. Mum stepped toward me, voice dropping sharp. Do you want the whole family looking at you like a thief at your own grandfather's funeral? My mouth opened, then closed. I could feel myself shrinking the way I always did when she used that tone. Mr. Patterson slid a folder onto the desk between us. Your father left explicit instructions to involve legal counsel if interference occurred. The word interference made her flinch. And I saw it clearly, guilt. In the corridor outside, Mum grabbed my wrist hard enough to burn. Listen to me, she hissed under her breath. You think this is about some little savings account? It's not. That passbook opens doors you can't close again. Then tell me, I said. Tell me what you've been hiding all this time. Her eyes flicked toward the lobby, checking who might hear. Not grief. Damage control. Some truths destroy families, she whispered. Your grandfather wanted to punish me. He set traps. Traps for who? I asked. For you. She squeezed my wrist tighter. For anyone who doesn't understand how things actually work. I pulled my hand free, and my pulse thudded in my throat. Why bury it? I demanded. If it's so dangerous, why not just throw it away? Her mouth twisted. Because destruction raises questions. Burial looks like nothing. Like time passing. Like forgetting. Behind us, the office door opened and Mr. Patterson stepped out holding a sealed white envelope. Layla, he said quietly, your grandfather left a letter for you. It can only be opened here, in this building. Mum went pale as paper. No, she breathed, not to me, but to the envelope itself. And that's when I realized something important. The passbook wasn't the real secret. The letter was. Mr. Patterson closed the office door again and placed the sealed envelope between us like it might explode. Before you open that, he said carefully, you should understand what your grandfather actually built here. He explained that the account wasn't designed to release money on demand. It was a verification trigger, a system that activated audits, cross-checks, and legal oversight the very moment the passbook appeared in person. Grandpa had anticipated interference and built something that couldn't be bullied, guilted, or emotionally steered off course. Mum scoffed. So he didn't trust me. That's what you're saying. He trusted process, Mr. Patterson replied evenly. He showed me the printed instructions, no withdrawals without identity confirmation, no changes without independent witnesses, no destruction of records under any circumstances. If anomalies appeared anywhere in the system, the bank was required to escalate automatically. Grandpa had taken family drama completely out of the equation and replaced it with procedure. I felt a strange mix of gratitude and grief wash over me. Grandpa had loved me enough to plan for this moment, but he'd also loved me enough to wait. He hadn't forced the truth on me while he was alive. He'd left the choice entirely to me, knowing that the simple act of bringing the passbook to the bank would be my consent to know. Mum leaned back in her chair, folding her arms tight. So what? You're going to let a bank tell you who you are? Mr. Patterson met my eyes steadily. No. The bank will only tell you the truth. My hands shook as I broke the seal on the envelope. Grandpa's handwriting slanted gently across the page, familiar as his voice reading the newspaper aloud on Sunday mornings. He didn't start with money or accounts. He started with an apology. I'm sorry if this hurts you, he wrote. I waited because truth without choice becomes another kind of control, and I didn't want that for you. He explained he'd noticed inconsistencies years ago, documents that didn't line up properly, stories that shifted depending on who was asking the questions. He didn't accuse anyone. He verified facts. When he tried to talk to Mum about it, she shut him down with tears and ultimatums. So he did what he always did when emotions muddied the water. He documented everything carefully. "If this letter reaches you," he wrote, "it means the passbook was buried, not destroyed. That tells me everything I need to know. It tells me you were ready to find out." My throat closed up. He'd known. He'd known she would try to hide it, and that I would be the one to dig it back up. Mum laughed too loudly beside me. "See?" He was paranoid in his old age. Mr. Patterson pointed to a line highlighted in yellow marker. "Your grandfather instructed us to request long-form identity records upon presentation of this passbook." I swallowed hard. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," he said gently, "we ask questions your family didn't want asked." The question landed without ceremony or warning. "We'll need your long-form birth certificate," Mr. Patterson said. Mum waved a hand dismissively. "Lost in a house move years ago." He nodded once. "We anticipated that possibility. The bank retains copies linked to restricted accounts like this one." He slid a document across the desk toward me. The paper felt heavier than it should have. My eyes went straight to the name listed under Mother. It wasn't hers. The room tilted sideways. I clutched the edge of the chair, breathing shallow and fast. "This has to be wrong," I said, even as my body somehow knew it wasn't. Mum leaned forward quickly. "I raised you. I fed you. I stayed when everyone else left." Mr. Patterson didn't argue with emotion. This document indicates an informal adoption arrangement without legal finalization." "Paperwork," she snapped. "That's all this is. Just paperwork." "No," he replied calmly. "Paperwork is how rights get protected. And it's also how abuse hides when the paperwork is deliberately missing." He asked if I wanted to take a pause, step outside for air. I shook my head. Something in me had hardened. I didn't want comfort anymore. I wanted clarity, whatever that looked like. Mum's voice softened suddenly, turning syrupy. "You don't need this pain. You're my daughter, Layla." I looked at the document again, at the stranger's name. Then why was this buried in the garden? She didn't answer that question. Mr. Patterson outlined the discrepancies methodically, like a doctor reading test results. Dates altered on forms. Addresses rerouted through family members. Signatures witnessed by relatives instead of officials. None of it screamed chaos or accident. It was tidy, deliberate, intentional. "This wasn't a mistake," he said carefully. "It was maintenance." Maintenance. As if my entire life were a machine kept running by withholding essential parts from me. I asked the question that had been clawing at my chest. Was this done to protect me from something? Mum opened her mouth, closed it, then said slowly, "It was done to keep us together." The bank manager didn't flinch. Control and care are not the same thing. He explained the consequences plainly. Identity mismatches trigger mandatory audits. Audits reveal patterns over time. Patterns require action under the law. The system had already begun reviewing every linked account automatically. Mum's face tightened with anger. "You're turning her against me with all this official talk." "I'm removing myself from the equation," he said. "The system will proceed now regardless of anyone's feelings about it." I felt a strange sense of relief wash through me. For the first time in my life, this wasn't a debate I had to win or lose through argument. It was a process unfolding beyond her reach or control. I looked directly at her. "How long have you known the truth?" Her eyes slid away from mine. "Long enough." And somehow that answer hurt more than any direct lie ever could. She finally said it when there was nowhere left to hide. "If I'd told you the truth," Mum said, voice cracking, "you would have left me. You would have chosen someone else over me." "So you chose for me," I said quietly. She nodded, as if that somehow settled everything. "I did what mothers do to protect their children." Mr. Patterson corrected her without any heat in his voice. "You did what controllers do when they're afraid of losing power." He explained the full scope of the review now underway. Accounts opened in my name without my knowledge. Credit accessed without my consent. Benefits payments rerouted through her address. Not love. Not protection. Leverage. My chest burned as memories rearranged themselves into new patterns. All the time she insisted on handling my mail personally. The lectures about gratitude whenever I questioned anything. The threats that I'd be completely alone if I ever disobeyed her. It hadn't been care or mothering. It had been containment. She reached for my hand across the desk. I stepped back instinctively. "I don't hate you," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "But you don't get to decide who I am anymore. That's done." Mr. Patterson stood up formally. "From this point forward, all communication goes through legal counsel. This is no longer a family discussion subject to negotiation." Mum stared at him, then at me, and finally understood something. The system had replaced her authority. "Would you open Grandpa's letter right there in the bank? Yes or no? Comment below." When Mum was asked to leave the office, the room felt quieter, like truth finally had space to breathe properly. Mr. Patterson explained what Grandpa had actually done, speaking with a care that felt almost parental itself. "He didn't want to force this revelation on you," he said. "Truth without choice becomes just another form of coercion, and he understood that deeply. Grandpa had structured the entire account so nothing happened unless I personally initiated it. No letters sent to the house. No lawyers knocking on doors. No confrontation until I was old enough and strong enough to stand on my own 2 feet. The passbook was a key, but I had to decide when to turn it in the lock. I felt a wave of grief then, not for what I'd lost, but for the years Grandpa had watched me live under rules he didn't trust. He must have seen all the signs clearly, the way I constantly deferred to her. The way I asked permission for things adults don't need permission for. The way I shrank myself to fit her version of who I should be. "He believed you'd know when the time was right," Mr. Patterson added softly. I thought of the garden, the dirt on my hands, the absolute certainty in Mum's voice when she told me to leave the passbook buried. She hadn't panicked randomly. She'd acted like someone whose carefully maintained plan had finally been interrupted. For the first time, Grandpa's silence while he was alive made complete sense. He wasn't absent or uncaring. He was waiting, armed with receipts. The backlash started before I even left the bank building. My phone buzzed non-stop in my pocket, missed calls stacking up, messages coming faster than I could read them. Family group chats lit up with concern that felt oddly rehearsed. "Are you okay? Your mum is really worried." This isn't how family handles problems. By the time I got home that evening, the narrative was already set in stone. I was confused. Emotional. Taking advice from complete strangers who don't care about family. I didn't respond to any of it. Mr. Patterson had warned me not to engage. "Let documentation speak for itself," he'd said firmly. "Stories collapse when they meet actual records." That same evening, the bank froze every account linked to my name pending the full review. Mum's leverage vanished quietly. No big announcement, no dramatic scene. Just access denied across the board. The tone in the family chats shifted almost immediately. Questions replaced accusations. Why isn't she answering? What's really happening? Then came silence. I sat on my bed with my phone face down on the blanket, feeling something unfamiliar settle deep in my chest. It wasn't victory or triumph. It was distance. The kind of distance that finally lets you hear your own thoughts again without constant interference. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't explaining myself just to survive the next conversation. And I realized suddenly how utterly exhausting that had always been. The audit results arrived with clinical precision 2 weeks later. Accounts I'd never opened in my life. Credit cards I'd never used or applied for. A personal loan taken out in my full name with repayments carefully timed to match Mum's income deposits. Patterns that weren't accidental, they were systematically efficient. "This constitutes identity fraud under current law," Mr. Patterson said. No judgment in his voice. Just legal classification of facts. I felt sick to my stomach, but not surprised anymore. The memories lined up too neatly now. My mail always redirected to her address. Her constant insistence that I didn't understand complicated finances. The way she always insisted on helping me fill out official forms, standing right over my shoulder. Help, I'd finally learned, can be just another kind of cage. The bank explained the next steps in clear terms, protective markers placed on my identity immediately. Reversals processed where legally possible. A complete paper trail forwarded to legal counsel for review. I didn't have to decide anything yet about prosecution. "What do you actually want to happen?" Mr. Patterson asked me directly. I thought about it carefully. "I want it to stop. Just stop." He nodded once. "That's exactly what systems like this are designed for." When I finally told Mum that the review had found systematic misuse of my identity, she didn't apologize or break down. She simply said, "I did what I had to do to survive." That was the precise moment I understood completely. This wasn't a mistake she regretted making. It was a strategy she genuinely believed in. She tried one final angle: mediation. A family meeting. A proper conversation. A chance for closure before things went too far legally. Mr. Patterson declined the request on my behalf without hesitation. "This is not a relational dispute between family members," he said. "It's a documented breach of law." The line was drawn with a ruler and legal precedent, not with a clenched fist or raised voices. He explained that from this point forward, the process would move without requiring emotional input from anyone. Counsel would handle all communication. Audits would conclude on schedule. Any outcomes would be purely procedural. No bargaining. No silence agreements. No rewriting what was already written in official records. Mum sent me a text message that night: "You don't have to do this to me." I stared at those words for a long time before I finally realized the deeper truth underneath them. I didn't have to do anything at all anymore. The system was already in motion now, functioning exactly as designed. It didn't need my anger to fuel it. It didn't need my forgiveness to proceed. It didn't even need my presence in the room. It simply needed facts. And it had those in abundance. That realization brought a strange, unexpected sense of peace. For once in my entire life, I wasn't responsible for managing her feelings about consequences. I wasn't responsible for fixing the aftermath of her choices. The weight I'd carried my whole life began to lift, one carefully documented step at a time. The solicitor confirmed everything 2 days later in her office. The adoption had never been legally finalized. Consent paperwork mysteriously missing from files. Records deliberately stalled in the system for years. And the woman listed on my original birth certificate, my actual biological mother, had been searching quietly for years without success. "She didn't want to disrupt your life," the solicitor explained carefully. "She respected the boundary she was told existed by your family." I sat there completely stunned. 2 women on opposite sides of a lie, one controlling me through calculated silence, the other respecting me enough to stay silent when told to. Mum called my phone again that afternoon. This time, she cried real tears. "If you meet her, you'll forget I even exist." I didn't answer the call. For the first time, I could see the truth with absolute clarity. My identity had been a resource she managed and controlled, not a person she trusted to make choices. The solicitor slid a thick file toward me across her desk. "You're not required to act on any of this information now. Or ever, if you choose not to." I closed the file gently, not out of fear, but because I wanted the choice to be entirely mine for once. Outside her office, the air felt different somehow. Lighter. Like a door had opened somewhere I couldn't see yet, but I could feel the breeze coming through. "If you discovered this about yourself, would you want to meet your biological parent, or leave the past closed forever? Tell me in the comments." Mum didn't fight the paperwork or the legal process. She fought me directly instead. She showed up unannounced at my flat one evening, standing in my doorway with red eyes and a visible tremble she knew worked on people. "Without you in my life," she said, voice breaking, "I have absolutely nothing left." For years, that exact sentence would have completely undone me. It used to sound like love and devotion. Now it sounded like a confession of dependency. I let her talk without interruption. About sacrifice she'd made. About staying when others had left. About how desperately lonely she'd been. Every single word was soaked in the same core message underneath. "You owe me everything." "I didn't steal you," she said finally, voice hardening. "I kept you safe." I nodded slowly. "You kept control over me." Her face hardened like setting concrete. "If I hadn't done what I did, you would have left me years ago." That was the truth she never meant to say out loud, and we both knew it. I didn't argue back. I didn't raise my voice or get emotional. I simply told her the bank had formally asked me not to communicate directly anymore. She laughed bitterly at that. "You're choosing complete strangers over your own blood." "No," I said quietly. "I'm choosing myself for the first time." When she finally left, the silence that filled my flat didn't feel empty at all. It felt honest. Like a room after a storm passes where nothing else needs to be said. The audit finished quietly without fanfare. No dramatic phone call with revelations. No confrontation in an office. Just a professional email outlining conclusions and next steps. Accounts linked to identity misuse were officially flagged in the system. Transactions reversed where legally possible. A complete report forwarded automatically to authorities. This is no longer discretionary, Mr. Patterson explained when I called. The system completes itself now. That sentence stayed with me for days. I hadn't had to persuade anyone of anything. I hadn't had to expose Mum publicly or defend myself against every accusation thrown at me. I had simply brought the passbook into the light, and everything else followed according to established procedure. My role was reduced to basic consent. Did I want protections placed on my identity? Yes. Did I want legal counsel formally assigned? Yes. Beyond those simple questions, nothing more was required from me. I realized then how much of my entire life had been spent constantly reacting, anticipating her moods before they hit, softening truths before they caused problems, cleaning up emotional spills before they spread to others. Now, there was nothing left to manage or control. The bank didn't need my courage or my anger. It simply needed accuracy. And accuracy, once properly recorded in official systems, doesn't care who cries the loudest or longest. The family shifted slowly around me, like a crowd realizing the stage lights had moved to a different spot. First came quiet apologies through text. We didn't know the full situation. Then excuses. We thought she meant well. Then careful distance. Mum stopped being the center of family gravity. Without access to my name, my finances, or my automatic compliance, her stories lost their weight. Documentation has a way of doing that. It doesn't argue back emotionally. One aunt asked me directly if I'd ever forgive Mum. I told her honestly I wasn't holding a grudge. I was holding boundaries firmly. People really struggled with that answer. Forgiveness is something they understand and expect. Boundaries feel like personal rejection to them. I stopped explaining the difference. For the first time, my life wasn't being constantly filtered through someone else's narrative about who I should be. I didn't have to perform gratitude on command anymore. I didn't have to prove loyalty at my own expense. The fallout wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet and permanent. And I learned something crucial. When control gets removed from a relationship, it either adjusts to reality, or it disappears completely. Both outcomes tell you the truth about what it actually was. When the account finally opened properly, it wasn't a dramatic moment. No champagne celebration. No grand total announced with fanfare. Mr. Patterson explained it plainly. The funds were legally reclassified as restitution, not inheritance. Compensation for years of identity misuse and deliberately restricted autonomy. It's yours now, he said, without any conditions attached. I held the passbook again, properly clean now, no mud on the edges anymore. It felt lighter than I expected it to. Grandpa hadn't used money to buy loyalty or obedience from anyone. He'd used careful structure to protect my ability to choose. I didn't rush to spend a single penny. I just sat there in the office, breathing slowly, letting the reality settle properly in my chest. This wasn't really about what I'd gained financially. It was about what I'd finally stopped losing. Time. Agency. Self-trust. For the first time in my life, money felt completely neutral to me. Not a leash. Not a reward for good behavior. Just a tool I could freely decide how to use. I thanked Mr. Patterson sincerely. He nodded once, already turning back to his computer and other work. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't need applause or recognition. It just needs to function properly. The final legal notice arrived without warning on a Tuesday. Mum was no longer legally recognized as having any authority over my affairs. No signatures required. No permissions needed. No access granted. It ended on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I didn't celebrate or call anyone. I just sat on the edge of my bed and felt something unfamiliar spread slowly through my entire body. Space. For years, every decision I made had been negotiated, both internally and externally. Would this upset her? Would this be taken away later? Would I owe something in return? Now, there was nothing left to negotiate. I wasn't cutting her off out of spite or revenge. I was simply stepping out of a role I'd been cast in without ever giving consent. That's the part people consistently misunderstand. This wasn't revenge fueled by hot anger. It was relief backed by cold documentation. The system didn't punish her for being my mother. It corrected her for systematically misusing power. And in doing so, it gave me back something I didn't even realize I'd never actually had before. Myself. Do you think cutting legal ties like this is too extreme, or sometimes absolutely necessary? Tell me what you think. People expected some kind of victory speech from me. They wanted me to explain everything, justify my choices, or publicly forgive her. I didn't do any of that. Silence wasn't avoidance anymore. It was active choice. When messages came asking for my side of the story, I let the official documents speak for themselves. When relatives hinted strongly that I should be gracious and forgiving, I stayed neutral. I wasn't punishing anyone by withholding access to my emotions. I was protecting them. I realized something important through all of this. Explaining myself had always been part of the control loop. If I talked long enough, someone could interrupt, reinterpret, or soften the truth until it fit their comfort level. Silence stopped that entire process cold. The bank didn't ask me to perform closure. Neither did the solicitor. The system had absolutely no appetite for theatrics, only for measurable outcomes. I began sleeping better. Making decisions without rehearsing defenses in my head first. Buying groceries without hearing her voice tallying costs and questioning choices. This wasn't numbness or shutting down. It was steadiness. People confuse restraint with weakness constantly. They assume calm means unresolved trauma. But I'd already resolved the most important thing. I didn't owe anyone a version of events that made them feel better about what happened. For the first time, my life wasn't an ongoing debate. I stepped back completely as instructed by counsel. The bank communicated with legal representatives. Counsel liaised with relevant authorities. Timelines progressed without requiring my input. I wasn't copied on every single message, and that was completely intentional. The system works best when it isn't constantly fed emotion. Occasionally, I felt the urge to check in, has anything happened yet? But I resisted it. This wasn't a cliffhanger to refresh constantly. It was a process specifically designed to conclude properly. When outcomes finally arrived, they were brief and purely procedural. Corrective actions completed. Safeguards confirmed in the system. No editorial commentary. That restraint mattered enormously. It meant the resolution couldn't be reframed as spite or personal retaliation. It belonged to the official record, not to my feelings. I noticed how different that felt from typical family conflict, where endings are always negotiated and constantly reopened. Here, the end was clean and final. I didn't attend meetings. I didn't answer questions. I didn't need to be there. Truth doesn't require supervision once it's properly documented. For the first time, I trusted something outside myself to hold the line firmly, and it did exactly that. A final envelope arrived weeks later. Inside was a short note from Grandpa, written in the same careful hand as the first letter. No instructions this time. No warnings. Just clarity. If she buried this, he wrote, it means you are ready to choose yourself. He explained that protection without autonomy is just another cage. That love isn't proven by how tightly you hold on to someone, but by whether they can leave without being punished for it. I cried then, not from pain, but from recognition. He'd seen me more clearly than anyone else in my life ever had. The passbook wasn't his real legacy to me. The structure was. He'd trusted a system to do what family wouldn't or couldn't, tell the truth without asking for permission first. I folded the note carefully and placed it somewhere safe. Not hidden. Not buried. Just kept. Some gifts don't change your circumstances. They change your posture in the world. There was no final confrontation. No dramatic goodbye scene. No apology that rewrote history into something bearable. I moved forward quietly. Changed my routines. Built distance that didn't announce itself loudly. People sometimes think closure needs a big scene. It doesn't. It needs alignment. I stopped measuring my choices against someone else's reaction. I stopped preemptively shrinking to keep peace. Peace that demands silence isn't peace. It's just compliance. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was spacious. I learned to sit with decisions without asking for approval. To enjoy plans that didn't involve justification. To let relationships exist without invisible contracts. The past didn't vanish. It lost authority. And that was enough. I opened a new account with my own documents, my own signature, my own rules. No co-signers. No intermediaries. No explanations required. That was the revenge, if you want to call it that. Not humiliation. Not destruction. Just permanence. She buried the passbook to keep control over my life. The bank returned it to give me freedom. And freedom, once properly documented, doesn't need defending. It simply exists. If you've ever had someone rewrite your story, or try to control your life, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, quiet justice, truth over manipulation, like this video and subscribe for more real confessional stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive.